Welcome to Life Science Success Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a consultant in life sciences. I help companies overall focus in on strategy, people, process, and technology. And we work across the industry from pharmaceuticals through to medical devices. And one of the things that's at the very bottom of this page is a link that more or less would take you to a place to sign up for a weekly event that I'm holding that focuses in on scaling organizations. And the whole purpose of this is to provide actionable steps to individuals that want to scale their organization. So with that, in this episode of Life Science Success, my guest is Brian DeDecker. Brian is the CEO and co-founder of Seedling Biosystems in Boulder, Colorado. The planet's ecosystem strained from current chemical and protein manufacturing methods, and Brian co-founded Seedling to help solve this crisis. So with that, welcome, Brian.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. And, I really, look forward to this because, I've certainly seen a lot of different applications of, different tools to try and help people in the space. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing how your company is overall focusing on, helping companies, especially cancer researchers as well. Could you start by telling the listeners just a little bit about yourself and your journey to the life sciences?
Sure. I can give a little bit of how I got into it. I grew up in a small town in northern Illinois, actually near the Iowa border. And I think this will be relevant, but my grandparents were farmers. And my parents worked for John Deere. They built tractors. I was the first to actually go to college in my family. And so I had an interest in science when I was in high school and young and such. And when I was able to get into the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And, the only path I saw forward for someone who, liked science was pre-med, right? So I was going down that route. And at one point, I applied for a research fellowship to basically enhance my resume for med school and such. I interviewed with a lab that was doing behavioral science, and anyway, I didn't get the fellowship. And then I went to the lab, and they rejected me as well because I didn't have the fellowship. So I was crestfallen. I was crushed, right? But in the meantime, I had talked to this had prompted me to talk to a few professors, which I would have never done, right? I didn't really know the system or what have you. But one professor was named Klaus Schulten, and he was a German physicist or biophysicist. He was just fascinating. So I went back to him, and it was early days. They were doing molecular modeling, so I guess it'd be the precursor of the AI and protein structure determination, things of that nature on computers now, right? And he said, sure. I said, I don't have the fellowship, but I still want to work in your lab, and he took me on, right? And he single-handedly changed the course of my career, my future direction, because once I got in the lab, I was like, I found my place. This is what I want to do. I want to do research. This is so much fun, right? And I just love the environment, and it became real for me. I think one thing he told me was that it stuck with me is, you can study science and use it to what do you say? You can beautify your mind, right? You can, and he says, but that's not what it's about. It's about building real things and building knowledge or what have you, right? And once I saw it that way, the textbooks look really different to me. It's like before it was just a bunch of facts to memorize, right? And now I'm like, oh my goodness, look at the work that went into like pulling this knowledge out, right? And the problems that need to be solved. And then once I saw it on that level, I was hooked. And I got into molecular biology, and just what you could do with that. All the way from describing where we came from to and at that same time, yeah. And he supported me, and like I said, changed the course, and I went on to graduate school from there. That was set.
Yeah, I feel like oftentimes, there that life works out, right? That yes, we face into these challenges. We all have them, and then eventually, there's an opportunity overall to create a different path that maybe we didn't initially intend, and it sounds to me like that worked out really well. I also. I mean, my background initially was in electronics and physics, so much more on that side before I started in life sciences at all. And the interesting part to me was just seeing the similar sort of thing. All of a sudden, you start to see these things come out of the textbooks. That these are the reasons why I'm learning these fundamentals, because they become building blocks that eventually hopefully will trigger that final spot in your mind that, oh yeah, this is the final puzzle piece that I needed to put it all together.
Yeah, and just the pure joy of they don't come along very often, those moments of discovery, right? And that's what's so precious. But then when it's like a it's like a drug, right? You're just hooked on that joy of finding that feeling again of discovering something, right? And so to me, yeah, it just makes it fun, and building something at the same time is also something useful, is also very important.
Yeah. And I feel like as well, so you have you have a rich academic background from Yale to Cambridge to Harvard. How have those experiences shaped your approach to molecular biology and bioengineering?
Yeah, so like I said, from being the first in my family to being the first to go to college, I sort of went all in the deep end, right? And so yeah, it was going to moving to the East Coast from the Midwest. It was a huge culture shock, right? You know, for instance, James Watson. I read his book, and never be the brightest person in the room, because you won't learn anything. So I had to sort of learn to get over that fear of being around a lot of smart, bright, dedicated people, and you know slowly along the way you find that you'll fit in, right? But you can't shy away from those situations, right? And
Right.
so that's what I learned at Yale for sure. And it was a great experience. I worked for Paul Sigler, who was a protein crystallographer, and that was actually my first time actually going to a wet lab. It was my first day of graduate school, so it was a bit of like a steep learning curve there. But I love the wet lab even more, right, than computer work. And what I learned there was, and from Paul, was just to have a real dogged passion for pursuing a goal. I mean, his mantra was, nature, she doesn't reveal her secrets very easily, right? And
Mm.
that's really true, right? If anyone's who's done research. And so, but just to know that you can, in this case was solving protein structures before AI, right? Someone had to put those structures in the database for AI to work on now, right? And that was Paul and people like him back then. And so and it was a lot, it was a lot of work. I just think it's funny now that it'll pop back on your screen in a couple minutes what the structure is, but then you had to like purify milligrams and milligrams of protein and try to coax those crystals. And so it was a real appreciation for just the hard work that you need to put in, right? Yeah. So and then from there, it just really became for me. I never really had a real pragmatic view of like where my career would go. I just look, when they had a small stipend there at Yale, and I was just completely blown away that someone was actually paying me to do this. I really was. I mean, I just couldn't believe it, right? I mean, I just love to have the opportunity to, like I said, that thrill of making, even small discoveries along the way, right? It just, and so it just became for me just about pursuing experiences and just learning more about different fields and such. So, and then that's what took me to Cambridge, England. And I was in the first lab there at Allen First. And so I started exploring like protein engineering, it's like a different field. And he's actually a real chess master. And so I sort of picked up from him how to think about problems deeply. It was, a real learning experience, and just cultural as well. Another cultural, opening. And then I came back to the States. I was on a scholarship for my postdoc, and actually, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do there. I sort of bounced around to a few labs, but then Tim Mitchison sort of took me into his lab, and so I worked at the Institute of Chemistry and Cell Biology. And from him, he's a world class scientist, just amazing. And he had sort of two philosophies going on that I sort of picked up between. He just had a real love for actually working out fundamental biology of the cell biology, right? But he also had sort of a side passion for actually using his knowledge to build things. In this case, it would be small molecules that could potentially become drugs and such, and it could actually help people, right? And so I think that's sort of my academic history, and it wasn't planned out, and it was all about just gaining experience and seeing different fields. Yeah.
And quite a few of those things I would imagine will help you overall in your journey now as well, right? So, thinking about problems deeply is something that, as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to, sort of face into as well. I guess that, one, what are some of those, really key learnings that you would take away from that experience that you feel like you're going to leverage, going forward?
Well, yeah, it's going to help me now for sure to have it. When I was first starting my academic career, it did not actually help me because what was sort of an eye opener for me is when first went into the process of first academic positions and such is they were definitely more focused on someone who had a very more narrow view of what they're going to do. And it makes sense. It's a pragmatic thing, right? Because if you're going to get grants and things of that nature, they're judging you on what your probability of success is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the more focus you'd been on a particular, path in science, I think it's easier to sort of calculate what your probability of success is, right? So, and having a diverse background doesn't really help you with that. So, but now I'm obviously glad I have it, and I think I think, for sure it's helping me. I even had a stint doing Drosophila genetics while I was at Harvard, and right now that genetic background is helping me because I can talk to the plant geneticists, and it's basically the same, right? Right. And then when I could talk to the protein purification, people, I obviously know that like the back of my hand. So yeah, it's helping me now, but I don't think it doesn't always help, or it may not help in the beginning, but it's definitely helping me now. Does that? Yeah.
Yeah. All fair. So what really motivated you to want to move from academia, into entrepreneurship? What made you, want this idea of starting a company?
Yeah. So, well, I'll give you another example that sort of was an experience that opened my eyes to the possibilities. So when I was in Cambridge, I was, like I said, I was at this Institute of Protein Engineering, Center for Protein Engineering. It was affiliated with the famous MRC labs, actually, where Watson and Crick came from and such, right? And like I said, the director was Alan First, who I worked for, and this co-director was actually a former student of his, was Greg Winter. And so the Winter lab was just across the hall from me, and so they were working on, familiar with, but they were working on humanizing antibodies, right? And they had a technology called they were using phage display, and it was just fascinating science. It was really cool science, just from an engineering perspective, or just from a science perspective. And so I watched them closely because I'm always trying to pick up new ideas and such. And it just here was some basic research using just a really cool engineering technique and such, right? And I just thought it was just cool. But as I saw that develop through the years, I saw that change the world, right? Monoclonal antibodies. Biologics, that came out of the Winter lab, has changed the face of medicine, right? Mm. And I saw it when it was, just like a cool idea in the lab, right? And I had no clue that something something could change the world, something I just thought was cool in the lab, right? Could change the world. And once I saw that, I'm like, oh, this plane that I love to, it really can change things, right? And so I saw that happen, and then that's always been in the back of my mind, and percolating, like, okay, these fun ideas that I love playing with can actually change the world, right? And so I just been sort of using my diverse background and just always constantly thinking about what could I piece together that would actually be meaningful, that would actually help and have an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things I feel like once you, venture down this path of entrepreneurship, you start to learn kind of that, one, the impact that you can have, but also the overall challenges that it takes to actually cross all of these hurdles to get to that end point of creating a company as well.
Right. And yeah, hurdles. I mean, I think, doing research at the bench level certainly prepares you for hurdles, right?
Mm.
And it is a different world I'm entering now, with starting a company and such. Um, but I still have in the back of my head that nothing is as hard as bumping heads, or trying to pull those secrets from Mother Nature, right? because there's just one answer out there, and there's no compromise, right? And so um, yeah, so I do think that research does give you a good a sort of a good toughening up for things not always working, right? But when
Yeah.
they do, it's pure joy, like I said, right?
Yeah, and I think the early phases of a lot of companies, are oftentimes, funded by government research as well. And so I feel like, NIH grants, do an awful lot to help, early stage companies. And that process and understanding how do you write a grant and what's, most attractive to companies is something that, most academics, understand very well. And I think the challenge becomes then, sort of focusing in on, okay, so what is it, how then different is the world of venture capital, or, finding angel investors, or, those sort of things. The nice thing is, again, with your academic background, is the sort of this idea of having a broader network as well, and so that definitely helps most individuals as well. Just having a broad network to focus in on.
No, for sure, and I'm learning quickly. The learning curve steep on that, in talking to venture capitalists, or just people in general. I think one thing that's helped me a lot with that is actually teaching.
Mm.
So spending many years, so I'm at CU now, University of Colorado, um, and I've done a lot of teaching, and I think that has been almost the most helpful thing. And I think what I learned from that, with just years of teaching now, is just it's just having empathy for the audience, right? And that takes work, right? And one thing I'm always teaching my students in the writing and things like that is the biggest one is the curse of knowledge. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
Oh, sure.
it,
Yep.
yeah, and that's a big one, right? And just teaching just gives you a real appreciation for that, right? There could be an idea in your head that just makes perfect sense, right? It just makes perfect sense to you, and you don't know where your audience's mindset is, right? And so you just blurt it all out to them, and none of it sticks, right? It just right. And so taking that step back, watching them carefully and seeing. So anyway, my point is, talking to venture capitalists is very similar to talking to young students, right? Or anyone for that matter, right? Is you have to be sort of cognizant of where they are, and then sort of meet them, more than halfway. And then you find if you take that time, you can bring them into, your idea, but you just need a little empathy and patience to do that, right? And so I think teaching has really helped me with that. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have to go back to the one-on-one level, with everybody, because you don't know where most people are starting from, unless you've, had the advantage of really understanding their background and sort of the things that they've come through as well whenever you're talking to venture capital firms. And so, you have to start at sort of this base level and sort of work them, back up to where you need them to be able to communicate it. And it's funny because last night's interview was with, I had a conversation with the CEO of Theoria Creative, and we were talking about this idea of scientific mechanisms of action and how do we, sort of convey those to venture capital firms as well. And so she was, just talking from more of a marketing perspective. This is how, we help sort of break down the message to build it back up as well.
No, for sure. And having a strong research background can actually hurt you there because you're used to an environment where everyone speaks the same language and such, right? And you might lose that skill, right?
Right.
Right. And when you're talking with venture capitalists or students and such, they're bright, right? And they just don't have your lingo. And so, with a little work, you can bring them along. And that's actually a joy too. When you're talking to someone that not quite getting what you're doing, but then you bring them along to the idea, and then it lights up for them, and that's almost like a little discovery or a little success that you've had. And so I just now view that as a challenge that can be fun to work out.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I spent a little bit of time myself as a adjunct professor, so certainly have never done this as a full-time career, but in that process I fell in love with teaching for that very reason, right? Just getting to watch the light go on for other people is just as much fun as well. And then now, as a consultant, I do a lot of, teaching in terms of this is how you, grow your company. This is how you build systems and processes inside of the company. And similarly, I find myself teaching again. So, it's almost like it never sort of leaves you once you have that initial bug, I feel like, of wanting to teach people and wanting to see, watching them grow gives you a lot of joy as well.
No, definitely, and it's definitely a skill, and you can always get better at it. So it's fun to work on for sure.
Absolutely.
And now and I think it's fun to now work out with a different audience.
Yeah,
an audience now with checkbooks, so that's a whole nother level.
Right, exactly. So could you give us an overview of Seedling Biosystems and its mission?
Yeah. So the mission is, the problem is biomanufacturing. There's a lot of, different industries that are just, not efficient or not green and such, right? So, and we want to change that by moving these processes to farming, right? And so, just going back, 10,000 years ago when we first started farming and put us along, I don't know if you read *Sapiens*. It's one of the favorite book of mine by Harari. But once we went along that path, and went towards, the Industrial Revolution and such, it's a powerful technology, farming, right? But it's put us on a path where we're actually, causing great harm to the environment and such, right? And so, just taking a look at where we are now, what we want to do is use farming to actually help solve some of these problems, right? And the reason is we're particularly looking at soybeans. Soybeans have been cultivated now for like 3,000 years. It's a well developed technology, right? And it's actually our most exported crop right now to China from the U.S. And you can think of these soybeans as storage of just endless amounts of solar energy, right? They're like batteries in some sense, right? But they're stored with chemical energy, and also, lots of protein, lots of building blocks to build things, right? And right now we're just not realizing the full potential of that, right? Right. And this is actually going back to my grandparents who had a soybean farm, right? And so, using my knowledge, I'm like, we can. Right now, it's being used mostly to feed cattle and feed chickens and such. And there's just a whole, basically solar energy storage here that's going unused, right? And so, and now we have the knowledge, we have the microbiology knowledge to actually, to actually utilize that energy and protein storage to actually help solve problems in other fields. Does that? Yep. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so a couple products that we're working on to start with here is one is a baby formula proteins, right? And so there's a class of some proteins that would actually make baby formula this missing from baby formula that some of the health benefits and such, right? There's very specialized proteins that you just can't get from cows, right? And so they're just not, you just can't get them. And if you do try to get them from cow milk, you would have to process just so much cow milk that the CO2 and methane emissions are just astronomical, right? And so our solution is to actually build these proteins directly in soybeans, to
Mm.
right. And so and the greenhouse emission cost is going to be less than 1% of what it would cost to make that. Another early target that we're working on is squalene. So it's an oil. It's a natural oil found in your skin and such. It's used in cosmetics, and it's also used as an adjuvant for vaccines.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so, in fact, mRNA vaccines need even more of it because counterintuitively, the mRNA actually doesn't elicit enough of immune response, right? So you actually need to add more of this adjuvant. And so that's a lot of that's currently harvested from sharks. There's olive oil trees are coming in, and there's been some work done in precision fermentation. But once again, soybeans actually make a very small amount of squalene, but not enough to sell, right? And so
Mm.
we're tricking the genetics of the soybeans to actually produce lots of squalene, right? And that we could actually cover the market.
Interesting. And then I saw an article as well from the University of Colorado that mentioned the magic beans as well, and it talked about cancer treatments as well.
Yeah, so we're playing around on the side. This is more long. That would be more long term, but it's yeah. So for instance, we're kind of working on is Taxol, which is a famous actually it was one of Tim Mitchison's favorite small molecule drugs. Right, it's a microtubule um, um, stabilizer, but it stops cell division and such. And it's harvested from a yew tree, a very slow growing yew tree. It takes 100
Hmm.
years to um, and so we're pulling out the genetics from the yew tree, putting that into soybeans, so it could potentially make Taxol in the future. But those are sort of long term projects for us. Another one is an anti-malarial drug that comes from sweet wormwood. Once again, not a very sustainable source, and we're pulling that out of these plants to make artemisinin and putting that into soybeans, right? So that's the idea. So these are known drugs that just have unsustainable sources, and soybeans are just a great alternative, right? Because
Right.
farming in the Midwest is really if you want to the cost of biodiversity and water usage is just on it's great, right? As opposed to building going to a rainforest for these things, right? So the potential here is huge.
Yeah, they always used to be my example for everything that we build in life sciences. Is somebody goes to the rainforest and comes back with some plant or something that all of a sudden they find that they want to extract to make the next generation of drug. And what I'm hearing is that they're fundamental building blocks that you can utilize in soybeans as well. Just to put it back in my simple terms.
No, exactly. That's exactly our long term vision, right? Is to do exactly that, right? Is to take things from delicate ecosystems like you're talking about, right? And there's gonna be more to come, right? But we don't want to harvest them from those ecosystems, right? Because it's just the rich biodiversity. Um, you know, and where I grew up doesn't have that same biodiversity, right? And so it's a great right, and so it's a great place, and it has plenty of water actually, so we're not actually we're not these areas in northern Illinois and Iowa and such, the soybeans don't need extra water and such, so our footprint there is way smaller to mitigate our impact by utilizing this like I said, these energy that have, utilized. Oh,
Oh, you
hello.
started fading on me, Brian. Sorry. So I think you're slowly coming back here. We'll see if you fully come back. It's the joy of doing this live with the internet. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I
Okay.
can see I'm sort of stalled here.
Yeah, I think you're back on my end now. So just in terms of the stage of where the company is today, where is Seedling today, and what is it that you're working on primarily right now?
Yeah, so yeah, right now we're in the stage of moving out of the lab. Test that's actually all of our round is to build grow up out of the sort of expand our grow operation, so we can start to build plants for the manufacturing process side. So anyway, moving out of the lab, that's the stage we are now, to take this technology and build it up, and eventually in fields in the Midwest where I grew up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring up while you were talking. I'm just trying to bring up on my end, any ways that I could try and help us, just complete the interview as well. So, in terms of your career, what is some of the greatest leadership advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, I thought about that. I don't know if this is exactly leadership advice, but my sixth grade teacher, Miss Wood, gave me a quote that I had on my wall for many years. And I actually still have it in my office. It's from Teddy Roosevelt, and it's do what you can with what you got, where you are, and I think that's kind of a philosophy that it served me well, and I'm trying to impart with my the people working with me in this company, right? I have a partner, actually a former student of mine who's been with me for the last 4 years working on this, Simon Kalmus, and I think he's fully integrated that that philosophy, and I think it's been serving us well, and the students and such. So yeah, you don't always have exactly what you need to solve the problem, but step back and assess what you do have, and then go after it.
That's important advice as well. Yeah. So there are three questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. I people in my past and in my future, so or my current. It's the people in my past, like my grandparents on both sides of the family who were farmers, worked incredibly hard to build a new life. My parents who worked hard. Like I said, my father in the John Deere factory was a tool and die maker. My mom was a printer. Just the amount of just hard work that they put in to put me where I was. I mean, that's inspiring. And then going forward, like I said, with my the students, like my former student who's now my co-founder, and the students I'm working with, they inspire me. This generation of of people, I think are they're inspiring. I think they really want to make a change, and they're willing to work hard at it, and I if I can help them do that, that really inspires me. So those are the just people in my life that are on both ends of the spectrum of inspire me.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. And definitely, um, you never know what might sort of carry forward for inspiration, as well as things that are in your past that all of a sudden you know ring true for inspiration for the future as well. What concerns you?
Well, obviously, just I think climate change is definitely our it is the weight on us right now, and I think that's going to become the basis of other as resources, land and such become more scarce. I think that's that brings out the worst in humanity, right? And so I think that's our biggest concern right now, that's going to start to weigh on us, and be the impetus for other problems. And so I think that's our biggest concern right now, for sure.
Yeah, and I heard a scary statement yesterday as well, which was the amount of effort that, that it's going to take. This one particular individual is just commenting and saying, the amount of efforts that it's going to take to even just make, 1% change in CO2, isn't really worth, the level of effort that's going to take or the dollars that's going to cost. And, we have to start somewhere, right? So, I feel like there's a lot of really good work that's going on right now. One, companies, that I hear about coming like Seedling, but then secondly, just watching what we're doing in terms of, just thinking about, carbon emissions and things like that it's important to be thinking about, and how do we adjust our, the way that we currently do things so that hopefully we don't continue to add to a problem that's already bad.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'll just move on to like, what excites me. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's the same answer. It's the same answer. The climate change is also exciting me, counterintuitively. Right. And I think what you just alluded to there, do what you can with what you got where you are. So here, we are where we are now, right? And
Right.
we have an almost, seemingly insurmountable problem, but that's exciting too, right? Right.
Yeah.
So, and I said, yes, obviously these pressures are going to bring out the worst in people, but it's also going to bring out the best in people,
Mm.
right? So it's the same answer. It's also very exciting. I mean, and obviously, it's going to bring out the best in people. I do have optimism that we will, collectively find solutions that all sort of chip away at the problem, and it will get better. Now, obviously, it's going to be a matter of how much pain is caused before we get to that solution, and that that won't necessarily be perfect. But the fact of the matter is, I do have faith that we will chip away at the problem, and we will come around, and it will bring out the best in us to solve this problem. So it also excites me. I just hope that we can, get to that solution and mitigate the amount of pain it's going to cause before we get there. But it's still an exciting problem to tackle and go after.
Absolutely. Well, Brian DeDecker, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. I really appreciate you being here and telling me about Seedling Biosystems, and I'm excited for the future for you, and what the company will carry forward. So, thanks a lot for being with me.
Oh yeah, no, thank you, Don.
Thanks.